Hi, hey, hello. It is I, the real main event, the rogue soldier, but more importantly than that, I am the essential John L. Crossfire, and today you are going to be caught in the crossfire, but we will be caught in conversation. So without further ado, let's do this. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 15 of the podcast. 15 straight weeks of me sitting in a room by myself, talking into a microphone. How about that? Here's to at least another 15 more. As always, I do hope you're doing well. We're meant to be getting out of lockdown tomorrow upon recording this here in regional New South Wales, so hopefully by the time you guys hear this, I can actually leave my house without feeling like I'm doing something illegal. I'm scheduled to receive my first vaccination in just a few weeks' time, so I am terrified about that because I absolutely hate needles. I hate needles, but these things must be done. Without further ado, however, let's just get straight into this week's show. This week, we watched more of the WWE Legends documentary series that I mentioned in the last episode. Of course, originally aired on A&E, airing on SBS On Demand for us here in Australia. Episode 4 was Booker T, and it was just an emotional roller coaster all the way through. So many highs, so many lows. Outside of knowing that Booker T, was in prison at a young age, as well as knowing that he was raised by his older siblings as the youngest of 8, I didn't know much else about him. As it really pertains to Booker T's personal life, there hasn't really been much on him outside of, one or two network specials / interviews that, they tried to cover as much as they can, but because it's such a short thing, it all just gets crammed, and in the end, you really end up with nothing. So this was a really cool, to watch, to get more of an insight into who Booker T the person is. And obviously Mrs. Crossfire wasn't very, aware of the Booker T stuff either, so it was awesome for her, get to see her react to it all. And it was really just awesome seeing the contrast between Booker T the person and then Booker T Huffman the performer as well. And then also as a trainer promoter, that kind of falls into performer as well, but it's kind of like a middle ground between Booker T Huffman the person and Booker T the performer. So it was really cool. I enjoyed it. Definitely go check that out if you get the chance. Episode 5, we had HBK's Shawn Michaels, and much like the very first episode of this series with Stone Cold Steve Austin, this is a story that's been told to death. It's been told God knows how many times, and yet even with this one, much like the Stone Cold one, they managed to dig deeper than they ever have before, especially with being more honest about the earlier days of his career and his substance abuse issues. We've touched on that before, and we all know that it's there, but he went into it further than he ever has, so it was really compelling stuff. Some of it, a bit depressing, but very fascinating nonetheless. And of course, they went into the Montreal Screwjob stuff as well, which has been done to death in many different formats, whether by WWE themselves. Dark Side of the Ring also did an episode on it, and just every, fan has done some sort of YouTube series or podcast or, anything like that about it. But this special, I feel, somehow managed to shed even more light on the Montreal Screwjob than anything else in the past. So that was kind of cool. I still, there's still that little part of me that feels like the Montreal Screwjob was the ultimate work, but I'm not going to go into that on this podcast because, as I said, it has been done to death. And being able to go back as well and seeing them talk about the 2 WrestleMania matches that Shawn had with The Undertaker at the tail end of Shawn's career. Of course, the first match was WrestleMania 25, which goes down as one of, if not the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. For me personally, I think that Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage at WrestleMania 3 is still the greatest WrestleMania match. And if not that, then Rock Hogan at Mania 18, just for the crowd reaction alone. But if not those 2 matches, in my opinion, but a lot of people do have that WrestleMania 25 match between Shawn and Taker is the greatest. And then obviously the WrestleMania 26 match being Shawn's final match. It wasn't as good as the 25 match, but it was still very much on par, especially from an emotional sort of standpoint. So it was really cool to see them go back and reflect on that. And then seeing Shawn hands-on with all the NXT talent backstage was really awesome to see. Just, there's a lot of good stuff in this one. Myself and Mrs. Crossfire marked out quite a bit for this Shawn Michaels documentary, in case you somehow can't tell right now. Episode 4 of Heels, it slowed down the pace of the show in a lot of aspects, but I still appreciated it nonetheless. It's still worth the watch, especially if you watch it, from a wrestling, mindset, considering, it is a wrestling-based show. If you look at it in wrestling terms, it's like the show was just kind of slapped into a rest hold sort of thing, and then towards the end of the episode, the babyface tried to fire up, which was the episode starting to pick up and get good, but then just like any wrestling match, the ending to that episode, the leaving you on a cliffhanger was like the cutoff spot, so to speak, in wrestling terms. So a bit slow, but still good nonetheless, and definitely looking forward to the next episode in this series. Over on SmackDown, we got further teasers of a heel turn between the Mysterios. Love it. Keep it coming. Hopefully they do pull the trigger sooner than later, though, or at least, give us a clue as to which one of the two is actually going to turn between Ray and Dom. But we'll just have to wait and see. The Paul Heyman stuff was great in all of the segments. Big E dressing as a janitor and hiding outside of Roman Reigns' locker room. Of course, Big E's the Money in the Bank holder, teasing he can cash in anytime, any place within, a 12-month period from when he won it. I loved it. Kind of slapstick comedy, but it kind of fits the Big E character because he can flip the switch. He can go from being serious to, to silly, and then silly to serious, vice versa sort of thing. So I love that little touch. Of course, Paul Heyman, battling between, whose side is he on? Is he on Roman Reigns' side? Is he on Brock Lesnar's side? I love it. Very good stuff. At the end of SmackDown, though, after Roman successfully retained his Universal Championship against Finn Balor, there was actually a tease of Finn Balor possibly bringing back the Demon King gimmick. Now, this will air a day after, the next episode of SmackDown, so hopefully by then, we've got either another tease or we've straight up, got the full Demon gimmick, since it will be, or I guess by the time you're hearing this, was at Madison Square Garden. Of course, MSG, renowned as the world's most famous arena. And of course, this was also branded as a Super SmackDown with Edge versus Seth Rollins 2. And then we're going to have Brock Lesnar returning. So very compelling stuff. I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully there'll be some good stuff coming out of that episode for me to cover on the next week's edition of this show. Over on Raw, Karrion Kross absolutely destroyed John Morrison, and this had me very, very torn, because on one hand, I'm a mark for John Morrison, as I've mentioned, Lord knows how many times in the 14 episodes or 15 episodes I'm up to now of this podcast, so it kind of makes me sad from a fan perspective, but at the same time, I'm loving the way that Karrion Kross is being built up. People are still going crazy about the fact that he's wearing a gladiator helmet, but whatever, I've said my thoughts on that. Hopefully The Miz, though, will be back on TV sooner than later to continue the feud with John Morrison after they split him up 2 weeks ago. Although the reason for The Miz's absence was actually just revealed yesterday upon recording this, and that's that Miz has been cast. He will be starring on the new season, the new edition of Dancing with the Stars over in the US, so it'll still be a few weeks at least until we see The Miz come back to Monday Night Raw, but hopefully, they do pick up where they left off between John Morrison and The Miz. Alexa Bliss versus Charlotte was made official for the Raw Women's Championship at Extreme Rules. I'm really hoping to see Alexa win this, because Alexa's gimmick has been the highlight of Raw for almost an entire year now, in my opinion, along with Randy Orton and now him and Matt Riddle as RK Bro. We had a tag team turmoil match throughout the night with the New Day, of course, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods running the gauntlet. However, the WWE Champion Bobby Lashley and his tag team partner MVP, of course the Hurt Business, would go on to win that. So next week we will have MVP and Lashley versus Randy Orton and Matt Riddle, RK Bro, for the Raw Tag Team Championships. Randy Orton laid out Bobby Lashley with an RKO to end the show. Of course, they're trying to tease that Orton will be the next challenger for Lashley's WWE Championship. Over on NXT, this is the last episode of NXT before the new era of NXT kicks off this coming week. We had the television debut of one Steph DeLander, of course, the real-life best friend of Indy Hartwell. She was at Indy's bachelorette party, of course. Australian independent wrestling fans will recognise her. She's a super talented woman. She's absolutely jacked. Cannot wait to see what she does in the ring in NXT because she, as I said, she's a very talented lady. Her new name in WWE is Persia. Kind of far out there, but at the same time, I really kind of dig it. They announced a big fatal four-way match for this coming episode of NXT as well between Tommaso Ciampa, Pete Dunne, Kyle O'Reilly, and L.A. Knight. Dummy. Yeah. With the winner being crowned #1 contender for the NXT Championship. I'm really hoping that we do get Pete Dunne versus Samoa Joe. I've mentioned that a few times on the podcast here as well. And, you know, there's a lot of teasers, rumors that Pete Dunne is still on his way out of the WWE. So, you know, at least give us Pete Dunne versus Samoa Joe before he does leave, if that indeed does happen. Dexter Lumis's bachelor party segment was absolutely super cheesy, but I loved every second of it. Johnny Gargano and Dexter Lumis finally high-fived. Yes! Who says WWE can't do storytelling? This coming week, Frankie Monet will challenge Raquel Gonzalez for the NXT Women's Championship. Both myself and Mrs. Crossfire are hoping for a new champion there. At one of the many events in conjunction with GCW this past week, the Art of War Games being one of the, I guess it was the main show of the bunch, if you will, Matt Cardona quickly defeated Frank the Clown in an open challenge in the main event of the show to retain the GCW Heavyweight Championship, but then Cardona was quickly attacked by someone in a Grim Reaper/Druid outfit, and it was quickly revealed to be Jon Moxley. This, of course, a callback to Cardona pulling the swerve where Cardona, attacked Nick Gage, and everyone thought it was Jon Moxley, but as it turned out, nope, it was Matt Cardona. Moxley went on to quickly dethrone Cardona as the GCW champion in an impromptu match. Moxley was quickly confronted by the aforementioned Nick Gage. Of course, these two have had a couple of run-ins with each other earlier in the year before Cardona was interjected into the situation. And now here we are after almost 10 years in the making and a couple of months worth of build-up. We're finally getting the rematch between Jon Moxley and Nick Gage. This has been confirmed that it will be a death match with the GCW Heavyweight Championship on the line on October 9th. Of course, October 10th here in Australia due to the time differences, at the yet-to-be-named GCW event that will be taking place in Atlantic City in New Jersey. It's funny because I'm not actually a fan of either guy, but in terms of a match, like, I'm keen as fuck. This is going to be absolutely insane. Insane. Straight up. It's gonna be insane. Over on Ring of Honor TV, Miranda Alizé and Roxy advanced into the finals for the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship after defeating Trish Adora and Angelina Love respectively, both by submission actually, so that'll be an interesting little tidbit going into this matchup. I still think Miranda Alizé gets the win here, although I'm just going to be happy either way because I still, obviously my original prediction was Allysin Kay versus Willow. That was before, they put the actual brackets out. And then upon seeing the brackets, I did say that I thought Miranda Alizé and Roxy would be in the finals. So that's a good one. I at least got that right. Hopefully I can get, the final prediction of Miranda Alizé winning the entire thing right. But Roxy could easily pull it off. Both women deserve it. Either way, this match will take place at the Death Before Dishonor event, which actually airs the day after this podcast drops. So I'll be reviewing that on the next episode of the show. Your song of the week this week is The Boys of Summer by the Ataris. I've been in a real punk rock mood lately, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, but just been listening to all this punk rock, and this is an all-time rock anthem, and I'd be rather surprised if you haven't heard it, or at least the chorus of it at least once. So go check that one out. It's an absolute banger. That song, again, The Boys of Summer by the Ataris. In wrestling news this week, we're starting off with some good news. Don West has announced that he is in remission with his brain cancer, so fingers crossed, thoughts, prayers, whatever it is you believe in, that Don has many, many years left with us. Pulling for you, Don. Glad to see you're doing well. Over at the NWA All-Women's Pay-Per-View, the first ever All-Women's NWA Pay-Per-View, Empower, which happened last weekend upon recording this, Awesome Kong announced that she will be retiring from in-ring competition. For those not aware, real name Kia Stevens, she's also has a very prominent role in the hit series Glow over on Netflix, where she plays the welfare queen character. But thank you, Kia, Awesome Kong, for all your many contributions to the business over the year. Many fans will know that she helped jumpstart women's wrestling into what it is today, all the way back in 2007 with her battles against the likes of Gail Kim and ODB. And after the aforementioned GCW event that I was just talking about, Ricky Shane Page has come out and he has said that he is retiring from the deathmatch style of wrestling. It will be interesting to see if he actually means this or if it's just a work, but he has been featured over on AEW Dark quite a few times in the last couple of months, so possibly a shift coming up in RSP's career, or maybe, he just wants to let his body heal for, a little while, just by doing some more traditional style matches, although he does still hold one or two deathmatch / hardcore championships in a couple of the smaller indie promotions in the US, so will be interesting to see, whether he just vacates them or if he drops them in like his final announced death matches. I don't know. Either way, Ricky Shane Page is a super talented dude. If anyone's seen any of his matches, you can't deny that, with or without the deathmatch style. So I wish him the best in whatever it is he's going to do in the future. But to end the wrestling news portion for this week, though, we have some pretty sad, pretty fucking sad news. First of all, this is going to be trigger warning, trigger alert. I don't know how else to put it like that way. The day after I recorded the last episode, it came out that former WCW star / TNA knockout Daffney, she posted a video online, and I'm not going to go into the full details, but she posted a video where she was alluding to kind of self-harming herself and so forth. A lot of, wrestlers and fans alike, they all reached out to her to try and help, but unfortunately, to no avail. It just kept going to voicemail. As the hours passed, the authorities finally found her. They had multiple different addresses. They finally, got the right address. And when they got to that address, they'd found that, she had tragically taken her own life. And first and foremost, my thoughts are with her immediate family and friends. This hit me a lot harder than I was expecting, to be honest. As someone who has dealt with and am still dealing with my own demons, it's just fucking rocked me, in all honesty. The day I'm recording this, it's actually, Are You Okay Day, and this is, while I think the day itself is kind of fucking stupid in some aspects, and I'll explain that, if you want me to, but I just, this is a perfect example of why you should reach out on any day, reach out to your friends. It's fine. Whether you're asking them, if they are okay, or whether, you need help, don't be afraid. I've said it over and over on this podcast, on social media, in real life, whatever, that it's okay to not be okay. And so if you do need help, please just don't hesitate to ask. there really is so many support networks out there. And as I said, on the other side of that, if you feel like one of your family and friends do need help, or hell, even if it's a stranger and you see them struggling, check in, just see how they're doing. Like, the fact that she was only 46 years old, it just puts into perspective the dangers, of professional wrestling / sports entertainment. Like, obviously, her own mental health had to do with that, but the concussions and stuff from wrestling, unfortunately, as much as it sucks, unfortunately had a very big part of it. Like, how many people now have we lost either still in their prime or at a relatively young age, or both? Like, it's just absolutely fucking heart-wrenching, and that's obviously an understatement, but I mean, it's always sad when someone passes away regardless, as everyone is worth something, even if you don't feel like it at times, but it especially hurts, when there's such an inspiring or influential individual. I first came across Daffney very early on into my discovery of TNA / Impact Wrestling, call it what you want. It was TNA at the time. And I quickly became a fan of the Scream Queen, Daff. And then obviously, when I've gone back and I've watched, old WCW footage and I've seen that she's popped up there, I was like, oh shit, I know who she is. Like, it was kind of cool. But my friends Andrew and Ryan, or Chapo, not to be confused with my other friend Chapo, aka Nick Maltino, shout out to all three of those guys. But my friends Andrew and Ryan, when we were in high school, it was like, year 7, year 8, so 07, 08, they introduced me to TNA. As I said, I think it was either the end of 07, start of 08, but I instantly became a massive fan. Andrew actually had the TNA Impact PS2 game, which I later got myself a few years later on PS3. Some good stuff there. But I instantly became a massive fan. of the product. And to this day, obviously, they've had their highs, they've had their lows. They've become almost like the Nickelback of professional wrestling, where everyone makes fun of them just because, but deep down that they're fucking talented. But yeah, to this day, they're still my personal favorite wrestling company. I remember watching the rivalry between Dr. Stevie, or Stevie Richards, and Abyss, and then, of course, Abyss and Mick Foley in 2009. And just seeing Daffney, get involved in those matches, and she's taking, bumps and thumbtacks and barbed wire and just all this crazy shit. And I'm just thinking, whoa, like, this is one hardcore what. And I mean that as in a term of endearment, by the way. Like, as well as her actually being in some of those hardcore type matches herself. Like, you want to talk about, a woman's revolution or whatever. And many will say that it did truly start with TNA knockouts in 2007, but even beyond the TNA knockouts, you had people like Daffney, who in the later years of WCW, before TNA was even a thing, and women like her, along with, WWE Hall of Famers Jacqueline and Alundra Blaze / Medusa, women like Bull Nakano, Luna Vachon, hell, even the current WWE NXT UK champion, Meiko Satomura, she was only 17 or 18 years old when she debuted in WCW back in the day. And they all did, and I'm hoping this doesn't come across as sexist. This is just, the expression that they use in the business, but they were wrestling like men. And in many aspects, that set the standard for what women's wrestling is today, for the women's wrestlers of today's era. And the term dream match gets thrown around quite a lot. But, like, could you sit back, think, imagine, like, Daffney's hardcore style of wrestling versus a Becky Lynch, a Charlotte Flair, Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley, Alexa Bliss, etc., etc. The two really big ones that stand out for me. I mean, along with a lot of other fans as well. I'm not the only one that said this, and this is where the magic of video games and action figures or whatever can come into play. Like, obviously, that's not going to fully recreate the magic of, what if, what could have been. But Daffney versus an AJ Lee would have been absolutely amazing. And the big one for almost, all wrestling fans that almost always comes to mind if you're thinking of a what-if/dream match scenario, especially as it pertains to the women's division, is what if Daffney versus Paige? Like, that would be fucking... That's the kind of stuff that just makes you love professional wrestling. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try and pretend, now that she has sadly passed, that, I'm like the president of the Daffney fan club or something, something to that effect. But I was and still am a big fan of her work nonetheless. And it just truly is a tragedy. Such a beautiful soul, such a great worker. The wrestling world, it really has lost a good one this week, as well as the real world has, for that matter, with her family and friends too, obviously. But you get the point that I'm making. I showed Mrs. Crossfire some of Daffney's stuff this week while trying to search for my match of the week, and she, much like I did back in the day, upon seeing this stuff, almost instantly became a fan of Daff's work. Like, it's a bit of a rant that I've gone on here, and it's, far from being an eloquent, touching speech, like Mick Foley and Alison Kay and others, have put up on their respective, social medias during the week. But just fucking wow. Like, she's, Daffney will sorely be missed by all. Thank you, Daffney, for all your for all your contributions to this business. I'm sorry that you're in so much pain. My thoughts are with your family, family and friends, as I already stated, for whatever that's worth. But there has been so many touching tributes by so many people, including, multiple amazing people in this business, and as I said, fans as well, which just goes to show you, the type of person that the Scream Queen Daffney really was. She certainly was one of a kind. And just once again, if you are struggling with mental health, please don't be afraid to reach out for help. It is okay to not be okay. Rest in peace to the Scream Queen Daffney. And due to this, absolute tragedy, your match of the week this week, it is Raven and Daffney versus Abyss and Taylor Wilde at Slammiversary 2009 in a Monsters Ball match. This was one of, if not my first time seeing Daffney back in the day, when I used to buy just, any and all WWE/TNA DVD that I could possibly get my hands on. I wasn't as familiar with the TNA product, as WWE, obviously. As I said, my friends, kind of just introduced me to it through the video games and, magazines and stuff. So I used to just grab, any or all DVDs. So some of the TNA stuff I watched was out of order from when it was happening. But yeah, this is a perfect example of what I was just talking about with Daffney. Just being absolutely nuts and just doing whatever she possibly could to make things look good. And Taylor Wilde certainly held her own in this match as well. And of course, Raven and Abyss. I mean, they're fucking Raven and Abyss. Their names speak for themselves, at least among the super wrestling fans anyway. And your best bet to watch this match is on the Impact Plus, app. You can watch it on the web browser as well, on, your laptop, computer, whatever. But if you can find it regardless, definitely go check it out. Again, that match is Raven and Daffney versus Abyss and Taylor Wilde at Slammiversary 2009 in a Monsters Ball match. And now for my review, or recap-ish, as I love to say on this show, of the groundbreaking AEW All Out PPV that took place just a few days ago upon recording this. It will be about a week's time by the time you're hearing this, if you listen to it on the day that it's dropped. Match number 1. We had the TNT Championship. We had Eddie Kingston, the challenger, versus Miro, the champion. Eddie Kingston was so damn over with the fans here in this opening contest. We got a Redeem These Nuts chant, of course, a reference to, Miro being the Redeemer, and that's what Eddie Kingston said to Miro in a promo heading into the match. He said, redeem these nuts. He's got a shirt on Pro Wrestling Tees that sold like hotcakes. Lots of chants of Eddie, Eddie, Eddie throughout the contest as well. Very solid opener, told a very good story. Kingston constantly trying all different kinds of suplexes, trying to soften up Miro's neck for a DDT, which has become Miro's kryptonite, so to speak. Kingston accidentally took off a turnbuckle pad while trying to protect himself from a German suplex from Miro, in a bit of payback on Miro's part as it pertains to all the suplexes that Kingston was trying to hit. The finish was a tad predictable with Miro doing a mule kick style low blow with the referee distracted. Like the setup just made it super obvious. But the live crowd absolutely ate it up. Miro was flooded with boos. Miro retained the championship via pinfall after a Machka kick, of course, his jumping super kick. Match number 2, we had Jon Moxley versus Satoshi Kojima. Of course, Kojima-san, an absolute legend in Japanese wrestling. I can't help but always singing along to Jon Moxley's theme song when he comes out. Of course, he comes out to a version of Wild Thing. Fans were solidly behind both men, but I think Moxley had the slight edge. Very strong style match, as expected. Shout out to one of, if not the best referee in the business right now, in Aubrey Edwards. Mox busted his elbow open, and almost instantly Aubrey had her gloves on. It was a nice back and forth contest. Moxley would eventually win via pinfall after hitting 2 of his paradigm shift DDTs. You know, the match was somewhat shorter than expected, but that allowed for post-match shenanigans. Minoru Suzuki, the murder grandpa himself, confronted Jon Moxley, and the two had a nice little strike exchange before Suzuki choked Moxley out and then delivered the Gotch cradle-style piledriver, just for good measure. I marked out super hard for this, but then again, who doesn't love the murder grandpa? Match number 3, we had the AEW Women's Championship. We had Chris Statlander, the challenger, with Orange Cassidy, versus Britt Baker, the champion, with Rebel and Jamie Hayter. Statlander definitely had her fans, no doubt, but Britt Baker is the most over women's wrestler in all of professional wrestling, in my opinion, right now, and I think, at least in Chicago on this night, she was probably the most over person in the entire building. It was just absolutely insane for Britt Baker were the fans here in Chicago. Both women looked absolutely amazing in this match, and the fans were with it the entire way. Lots of false finishes. Could have gone either way. Chris Statlander took a curb stomp from Britt Baker on the floor, and Orange Cassidy, of course, he's usually super relaxed. He has, basically a sloth-type gimmick. He got super fired up trying to cheer Chris on and, will her back into the ring, and that was actually the reason that she was able to will herself back up and get into the ring. It was just a little thing in the match, but I appreciate it greatly that, their friendship is so strong that it actually made Orange Cassidy show emotion. Super cheesy, but fucking works. Britt hit a Panama Sunrise, of course, her fiancé Adam Cole's move. Basically, the destroyer off the second rope. At this moment, I shouted, "Adam Cole, baby!" because I'm a fucking mark. Chris Statlander looked really strong in this match, kicking out of 2 curb stomps, if you count the one on the floor, along with the aforementioned Panama Sunrise, which Excalibur called the Pittsburgh Sunrise on commentary. Mrs. Crossfire thinks we should be calling it the Britsburg Sunrise, and I completely agree with that. Britsburg Sunrise all the way. Britt Baker eventually would retain the title via submission with the lockjaw. Excellent job by both women. Match number 4, we had a steel cage match for the AEW Tag Team Championships. We had the Lucha Bros, Pentagon and Phoenix, the challengers, versus the Young Bucks in Matt and Nick Jackson, the champions. There is so much to say about this match, and yet it just speaks for itself at the same time. Holy shit, man. I said the other week when I reviewed Ring of Honor's Glory by Honor event that Matt Taven versus Vincent was the best cage match I've seen in years, and then all of a sudden this one comes along and just, Jesus Christ, I started to lose my voice during this match. It was an absolute spot fest and a half. And I think everyone was expecting that anyway, but it still somehow managed to tell such a great story at the same time. It was just, I don't know how those two mixed, but they did. It's usually either a good psychology or it's a spot fest, and, you've got people like Cornette ranting, but somehow these two teams did a great job of just blending it all together, and it was just, mwah, chef's kiss, just an absolute fucking war. All the flippy-doos and super kicks, but just so much yes. Thumbtack-covered shoes, cave dives, all the blood on Pentagon's face. Even the entrance at the very beginning, you know, when the Lucha Bros came out and they had someone doing a live rap for them was just a little tidbit that I thought was cool. The Lucha Brothers eventually got the win via pinfall and were crowned the new AEW Tag Team Champions. Congratulations to them. Many pops were had in this household. Both myself, Mrs. Crossfire, and my brother-in-law just lost our fucking marbles for this match. Just, holy shit. Just, absolutely. 10 out of 10. 5-star match. Fucking 7-star match if you're Dave Meltzer. Like, it was just great. Absolutely great. Match number 5. I just need 5. Get out of here, Big E. No one invited you in. Women's Casino Battle Royal. Basically, you take a deck of cards. You know, there's 5 women in each suit. You shuffle them in a random order of entry, like, you know, a bulk rumble type gimmick. And then the Joker card, which is a single person, gets to come out last. And of course, just like a rumble elimination, is over the top rope with both feet hitting the floor. The clubs were out first, and then Sky Blue, who was the young upstart, and the hometown girl, was eliminated first in the match, followed by Abaddon, which made me sad because I was hoping she'd go a little bit further. I love her gimmick, the whole zombie thing. It's kind of cool. A little bit cheesy, but I like it. I like, you know, dark, out there gimmicks. That's just me. The Diamonds were out next. We had Nyla Rose a part of this group, and she absolutely just cleaned house. Out next, we had the Hearts, and then obviously, finally, we had the Spades. This is where the action started to accelerate. Rebel took a brutal spill to the floor when she was eliminated. Could have been very disastrous. Luckily, she was okay. Finally, the Joker came out, and it was a debut as a surprise person signing with AEW, and it's Destination Unknown. Ruby, 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 Ruby Soho. How fucking good are Rancid? Such an underrated band. Love them. Love my punk rock. But Ruby Soho is all elite. Fuck yes. She will be an amazing addition to the AEW women's roster, and of course, formerly Ruby Riott, who was released from WWE earlier in the year, and I actually covered that in one of, if not the first episode, here on the pod. Formerly Heidi Loveless, before that, commonly misnomered as Heidi Lovelace. And I've been listening to her theme song actually all week before this event even took place, because as I said, Rancid are just sick. They're low-key one of, like, my favourite bands, but fuck yes, Ruby Soho is here. Thunder Rosa single-handedly eliminated Nyla Rose, which I was kind of like, yeah, I feel like, you know, Nyla should have kind of got, like, the Big Show spot, where it took a couple of people to tip her out. Like, I don't think, you know, Thunder Rosa needed to look that strong, but at the same time, I get it. It's Thunder Rosa, she's a talented woman, it's got lots of fans, it is what it is. Ruby Soho and Thunder Rosa were the final 2 of this match, and the fans were split down the middle. Eventually, Ruby Soho would get the win with her trademark short arm Pele kick. I'm not sure what she's going to call it going, you know, forward here, as I didn't mention it on commentary. Of course, it used to be called the Riot Kick in WWE. But yeah, she hit the kick, and then Thunder Rosa fell to the floor, thus being eliminated. Match number 6, we had Chris Jericho versus MJF. If Jericho loses, he will have to leave AEW. MJF with the ultimate troll move in his entrance, having a countdown, shades of old school Jericho. I love that, popped the shit out of me. Jericho had a live instrumental of his theme song, Judas by Fozzy, performed by Billy Gray from Fozzy, of course, Jericho being the lead singer of Fozzy. MJF so far in this rivalry was 3-0 against Jericho. JR on commentary again put over what a great job Aubrey Edwards was doing as a referee. Some nice little references to Jericho's entire career throughout this match. Jericho actually did an apron powerbomb, of course, a reference to Kevin Owens, who, you know, him and Chris Jericho had a great, you know, tag team and then feud in WWE. MJF hit Jericho with both a codebreaker and a Judas effect of his own, of course, 2 of Jericho's trademark moves there. So much drama, so many believable, that's the most important part, so many believable false finishes. MJF pinned Chris Jericho for 3, but Jericho's foot was on the rope, so the match was restarted. Jericho tried to get a quick pinfall with a roll-up, but MJF just managed to kick out, but eventually Jericho would go on to get the win via submission by making MJF tap out to the walls of Jericho. I really loved the finish to this match, with having the foot on the rope and then having it restarted. It was very Pat Patterson-esque. Of course, Pat Patterson was a very big mentor for Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho calling him, his wrestling, Yoda sort of thing. And, as Pat would say, you make the crowd go banana. Where's the Shakespeare, Have the gaga. Like, it was just great because, you're like, no. Like, I was still yelling at the screen, like, his foot's on the rope, his foot's on the rope. And then, another referee comes out, of course, the senior referee, and then tells Aubrey that, hey, this happened. So Aubrey restarts the match, and it's like, boom, Jericho wins, and you're just like, thank God. Because it's like, obviously he's going to be leaving, sooner than later to with Fozzy, but, didn't want his career to be over. Like, I'm sure if he had have lost, he probably would have found a way back, because it's pro wrestling. But at the same time, you never know. And at the end of the day, I'm a fucking mark. But anyway, match number 7. We had CM Punk versus Darby Allin. CM Punk's first match in 7 years. All the anticipation. The picture on the bottom of Darby's skateboard was freaking sick with, the half Darby, half Punk face. The fact that we were in the 7th match here and the fans were still so into it, still so loud, was just absolutely awesome to see. It's clobbering time! So good. CM Punk was wearing long tights, which was a little bit weird after years of seeing him in trunks. And in the early days, he wore like the baggy basketball-style shorts, but I dig it. They did an amazing job, of portraying the big fight feel. We got a holy shit chant before the bell even rang. Big fucking mood. Followed by a welcome back chant for Punk when the bell did ring. Dueling chants of Let's Go Darby and CM Punk. Obviously, the CM Punk chants were just a touch louder, but again, saying that it was in Chicago, so it was always going to be that way. CM Punk's still wearing the long tights. Okay, this is weird. But again, I dig it. Match was fairly slow-paced, rightfully so, being Punk's first match in 7 years. Of course, there was a lot of references to Bret Hart versus the 1-2-3 Kid, also known as X-Pac, Sean Waltman in here, but I appreciated all of those. My voice was super shot by this point, by the way. Like, it was just fucking crazy. CM Punk hit the GTS. Darby took a nasty spill to the floor. Punk had a beautiful counter towards the end of the match to Darby's coffin drop. It was just so subtle, yet so expertly done, so well executed, so beautiful in terms of timing. Literally all Punk did was just sit up, and then Darby just crashed and burned, but just the timing of it, the look on Punk's face, this is great. Punk hit a very stiff leg lariat, and that was really the only bad timed thing that I saw Punk do in the entire match. And then he hit a second GTS for the win via pinfall. Nothing fancy, but so well together, so well put together in terms of psychology. As I said, they had a little bit of a reference to Bret Hart and Sean Waltman there, but I dig it. It's a callback. It's not really ripping it off. It's more paying tribute, at least in my opinion. I can't wait to see what Punk does do next in AEW. Sting came out to the ring. Of course, he's Darby's mentor, and all 3 men showed a sign of respect with each other. Match number 8, we had Paul White versus QT Marshall. That's Marshall, not Marshall. Don't call him QT Marshall. He'll get mad. He'll get mad now. Just like when you call me Johnny Crossfire. It's John, not Johnny. Just like calling, Stardust Cody. They're totally 2 different people. That was a rant. I've had too much caffeine. But this was kind of the let me up match. It's kind of break up, Punk and the main event. Paul White's theme song's a banger, by the way. It's still actually the original singer from the original, Big Show theme song in WWE. Paul White got the win via pinfall after a chokeslam. Very good chokeslam at that. But backstage, we got a Jon Moxley promo, and Moxley versus Suzuki will take place on this week's episode of Dynamite, which actually will take place today when I am recording this. So by the time you're hearing this, that match will be done and dusted. Match number 9 / the main event for the AEW World Championship. We have the current Impact World Champion in Christian Cage, the challenger, versus Kenny Omega, of course, the defending AEW champion. These men just went straight at it, throwing everything at each other. There was a spot where Kenny double stomped a table while it was on top of Christian, of course, one of Kenny's patented offense, but the table actually broke over the top of Christian, which was pretty nasty. Kenny slipped on a moonsault attempt, but he luckily recovered very quickly. And I love the constant teasing, both men constantly going for their finishing moves over and over respectively, because like on one hand, it shows the respect between the two competitors, and at times desperation, and I just love it. Like they know that they have to hit their biggest shot, so to speak, to put the other man down. Christian speared Kenny off the apron in an attempt to put Kenny through a table, and instead it just kind of collapsed, and the leg snapped off and it flung up right into Kenny's back. It was all in a matter of seconds. It just kind of table broke, and here comes the leg, and Kenny's spine just compressed on top of it. Ouch. I think part of the table actually sliced open Christian's rib, I think it was. Ouchies. Kenny did a beautiful sell off a second spear that Christian did in the ring moments later after that, and then again off the kill switch. But of course, Kenny is one of the best when it comes to selling. There's absolutely no doubt about that, whether you like him or not. Eventually, Kenny would get the win off an avalanched one-wing angel that scared the shit out of me, but luckily he did a great job of protecting Christian's neck. Pretty good match all around. I still don't think it was as good as the match that they had on Rampage, but the finish alone was fucking sick. After the match, Adam Cole, baby! Holy shit! It's been rumored for weeks that this is where Cole was going to go, when his contract did expire. And just, holy shit, like, I still wasn't expecting it to happen. I thought, they'd still wait, at least a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. But just no, the lights went off. They came back on. Adam Cole came out. His new theme song's fucking sick. I still prefer his old Ring of Honor theme song. His new logo is sick. I hope they put that on a t-shirt. But yeah, like, Adam Cole has debuted in AEW, and he is with the Super Elite. He teased attacking Kenny, but swerve, he super kicked Jungle Boy. They attacked the Jurassic Express. I still feel like that Kenny versus Cole is still an inevitable match, though, with the Young Bucks kind of being torn over who to side with. I think that'll be awesome. It's definitely going to happen at some point, I feel. But that's not all, though, because Daniel Bryan, or Bryan Danielson, he's now here in AEW too. The Jurassic Express were getting beaten down by the Super Elite, and all of a sudden, out comes Bryan Danielson. He aids Jurassic Express in taking out the Elite, now accompanied by Adam Cole, as I just mentioned, and the show ends with Bryan Danielson and Jurassic Express standing tall. I'm not actually a fan, per se, of Bryan Danielson, but by God, is there about to be some amazing matches in AEW. Holy fucking shit. I'm sorry for the swearing, but it's marked as E for explicit for a reason. Overall, one of the better pay-per-views in general, in freaking years, regardless of promotion, and it's just how it is. You can call me a mark, I don't care, it's not an insult. The cage match was definitely match of the night for me, but from top to bottom was just wow. Like, there wasn't a bad match. Like, even Paul White versus QT, like, yeah, it was just kind of there, but it was there. It was the let me up match. It served its purpose. And regardless of who you're a fan of, what promotion's your favorite, like, right now, it's such a damn good time to be a wrestling fan. Like, everyone wants to talk about WWE versus AEW, New Japan versus, Ring of Honor versus Impact, NWA starting to make a rise again, but, like, there's no losers here. Like, wrestling fans are the winners, and that's just how it is. Like, this show, like, it made me a little bit emotional, because, like, I actually started marking out, like, for Adam Cole and that, and, like, I actually got a bit teary-eyed when the show was over, because I was just like, what is this feeling that I'm feeling? Like, I'm not ashamed, I have no shame in saying that. Like, I love professional wrestling, and this event just drove that point home even further. Like, sometimes I struggle to watch just as a fan now that I've been in the business, because I'm trying to, like, constantly dissect shit. But everything in this show, even though I was planning on, doing a recap for the podcast, I was still, mostly looking at through a fan's eyes. Like, it just drew me in every step of the way, and it's just fucking beautiful, and I just love that. And then to cap all of this off, and this is kind of wrestling news, but I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to spoil the recap. But after this event happened, Kevin Owens tweeted out, and then quickly deleted, the coordinates to Mount Rushmore. And this might seem random to some, but Owens, back when he was Kevin Steen, of course that's his real name, he was in a group called Mount Rushmore with Adam Cole and the Young Bucks. And Fightful have reported that Kevin Owens' contract is actually scheduled to be up in January of 2022, so that's only a few months away. So that leads you to beg the question, what if? And I'm going to leave it at that, otherwise I'm going to go on another rant in terms of fantasy booking, and I'm trying to bring this to a close. So please don't forget to follow this podcast on whatever platform it is you're listening on. Please click the link tree in the description for merch and social medias. If you could especially give a like/follow to the Court and Conversation Facebook page, that would be much, much appreciated. Again, your song of the week was The Boys of Summer by the Ataris. Your match of the week is Raven and Daffney versus Abyss and Taylor Wilde at Slammiversary 2009. Rest in peace to the Scream Queen Daffney. May your light shine wherever you are. I am the essential John L. Crossfire, and you were just caught in conversation.